We will be using oil pastels to color in our Grant Haffner inspired landscape, or roadscape. We want to think about groups of color. We know analogous colors are colors that go really well together. For example, green might go well with some other yellow, because yellow is part of what makes green, and then maybe a darker green. So I've got a light, dark green, and a yellow. These colors would be more analogous or similar, but if I want a color to pop, I would choose a complementary color, like red. Now, when we are coloring, we made guidelines on our paper because we need our colors to point towards the vanishing point. That means whenever I make a line, I have to turn it to make sure it's pointing at the vanishing point. Your ground cannot have horizontal coloring or it will lose the illusion of space. Space is how a picture looks like it gets further away or closer in different areas. So as we're coloring, we want that color to create space. Now, I'm choosing some yellow and green, and look how I'm kind of picking different spaces or places because oil pastels mix, but they don't cover each other up. So my lightest yellow cannot cover up a green. It might mix with it, which would be neat. I'd make kind of a yellow-green. But if I want there to be any plain yellow, I have to give it its own space. So it's almost like I'm making a paint by number with the oil pastels. I'm choosing which area, which color will go, each in its own area. But as they get close together, it is fun to start doing some overlapping or blending. If you've worked with oil pastels before, you'll know that they blend kind of difficultly. They're not as soft as chalk pastels, but they do create some interesting texture when they blend. Now here I'm popping in some red. Maybe it's some passing plants or flowers that have gotten blurred in the vision, but I can't blend the red with the green or I will end up making brown because red and green are opposite colors. So if I do choose to pick a pop of color like that, I have to be careful not to smudge them together too much. All right, now I'm going to pick some new groups of colors for the other area. I can choose to have them similar so that it looks more related, or I could choose a whole new group so it feels like a different area. Now when we do the road, you can decide if you want your road to be more realistic with blacks, grays, kind of like the cement or the asphalt that is on the road, or if you want it to be more crazy colors. We saw both in the art that inspired us. I'm going to choose some more simple road-like colors, such as black. And when I do, I'm going to plan to put my white on top of the black and mix to make gray. Oil pastels do mix kind of like paints. When two colors are layered, they will combine. If I wanted any of it to stay a bright white or a lighter color, I would have to leave that paper empty because, again, the white won't cover up the black. It will just mix and make gray. Here I'm even adding some purple because why not? This is our chance to redesign the way things look. So using colors that are not completely normal is a fun way to mix things up. But I'm still keeping it fairly dark, which helps me recognize it as a road. Now, I'm using the white and I am going on top of everything. And look how it is smudging and smearing those colors together. I'm still coloring in the direction that points towards the vanishing point. So I'm not going side to side. I'm going diagonally or vertically. And I'm keeping those colors pointing towards the vanishing point. However, I'm using the white oil pastel to smudge and smear so that it looks a little bit smoother. When we use oil pastel, it's kind of like crayon, where it oftentimes leaves some white paper behind. And so in order to cover that up, I'm using my oil pastel to smudge and smear it. We can use our hands or paper towels to do that too, but honestly, oil pastels themselves are the best at mixing the colors together. So picking a lighter color that can smudge and smear on top of the darker ones is a great way to create a softer, smoother, smudged look to really fill in the rest of that empty paper. Now it's time to move on to the sky. Once again, we need to think about the element of space. If we look at a sky outside, the feeling of the sky or the direction of the sky is more side to side or across. if we look across the sky, so it goes left to right. Now I turn my paper because it'll be easier for me to color it this way and keep those directions. But remember how we created those horizontal lines in our sky to remind us to make sure we color left to right. If I want to leave any of my sky white or cloudy, then I need to not color with the darker colors. So I'm leaving gaps between my areas of lines. So they are kind of going horizontally. Well, in this case, my paper is turned, so the lines are vertical, but they're leaving some space between them. It doesn't have to be a perfect row or perfectly straight. As we saw in some of our inspiration artworks, sometimes the sky was slanted or even a little bit curved. Wherever you put your guidelines, that's what you want to follow to make sure you stay consistent and that all the lines are going the same direction. Another way to create a large area full of color is to do the lazy method, which is when you turn the oil pastel on its side and smear it all the way across. Now I'm doing this in an area where I don't need to keep anything white because I'm now covering up all of the paper, and then I'm going back on top to make those lines or directions with my multiple colors. So this is another way to kind of speed up or fill in a big area, but you will still need to add more on top of it to really smudge and smear it to get that smoother, softer effect. Once you finish the large areas of color, at the very end is when you can choose to go back and add black oil pastel lines and designs on top. You don't want to add the black oil pastel when you are still smudging or blending, or it can muddy or make your colors dark. So once you're here, then you can choose if you want to add the electrical poles that we saw, maybe a fence or some sort of detail in the background, but try to keep the majority of your picture fairly abstract with minimal details added.